Hi. All right, I'm back again because I don't know what's good for me, so I said I would give two talks today. This one is called Leadership Skills for the New Manager. I would like to think that it will be helpful for anybody who ever has to lead other people ever. Um, Not to blow myself up too much, but there's stuff in here that I think will just be helpful for everybody. So even if you're at the beginning of your career or you've been a manager for a really long time, I hope that you'll stick with us. If not, go to the other session. It's probably great. I'm Eryn. Nice to see you again if you were in my previous talks. I use she, her pronouns. I describe myself as a people first engineering manager. So that means that I think people are the most interesting problem in computer science. And I have a lot of experience as a dev, but management is just what grabs my heart. I've led some people. I've had titles ranging from manager to director and tech lead, informal stuff, formal stuff, the whole thing. It's just sort of where I find myself. It's my natural happy place. I've written some code. I have over 10 years experience as a developer, plus too many years in school. And I put in my time there. I understand it enough to lead other people who do it, but it's just not what I love so much. And I tweet a lot. Not as much lately because what is time anymore? But in general, I tweet a lot. So you can follow me on Twitter. My handle's in the bottom of all the slides. So this talk started as a 4-hour workshop. I was supposed to give it in March, right before the world shut down. Then I said that I was going to give it at Minnebar as a 45-minute talk. And then the world shut down. So I gave it at Minnebar, and now I'm back giving it again in 25 minutes. So this is going to be great. Let's do this. What is a manager's job? Let's just define this up front because there's a lot of people I think that have the wrong idea about it. So when you're a developer, it's really easy to understand like what success is. It's very, very simple to measure it because you're going to look at enumerable metrics. How many tickets did you close? How many bugs have you squashed? How many features have you shipped? All of these things that are really quite countable. As a manager, measuring success is a little different. You don't really have useful metrics. Sure, you're going to invent some, and you should, and your company might already have some in place, but it's a lot less obvious what success means. So let me propose a definition that I live by, and we can use it for the duration of this talk. And if you don't like it, after 24 minutes, ball it up, throw it away. I say a manager is successful when they have a healthy, happy, and high-functioning team. So as a manager, you don't really measure success by your own output anymore. It is measured by the output of your team and whether or not you are a positive multiplier or not. So what is a manager's job? It's to foster a healthy, happy, high-functioning team by being a leader. Yeah, I know it's a super non-answer, but just stay with me here, okay? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You've heard this, yes? Means that when the team gets together, they can accomplish things that they couldn't do as individuals, even if you added up all of their individual output. The leader is the person who makes that true. So that's not always going to necessarily be the person with the leadership title. Hopefully, they're at least one of the people making that true. But a leader in any context, in any group, is the person who brings the skills, who brings the glue and the cohesiveness that can make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. So what I want to talk about today are just a few of the 4 hours worth of skills that are really helpful and in some places essential to making this brew come together into something delicious. So to be a good leader, pretty straightforward process. First, I think you got to put people first. The people on your team, the people that you're working with, they are why you have a job, and they are the people who are actually putting the work out. So putting the people that you work for first leads to success in all of the other places. And notice that I said that you work for. It's a bit of an inversion, I think, that should happen when you're thinking about managing. You can think of yourself as working for your boss, and those other people work for you. And certainly that's a thing that we say, but really an attitude shift is appropriate here. Your job is to help other people succeed. So really you are working for them. Sometimes this is called servant leadership. That feels like I'm like a little uncomfortable with that term because there's just like this evangelical like vibe about it that doesn't sit well with me. But servant leadership is totally a buzzword that you could look up if this is a thing you want to read more about. The idea is just that the people you work for are the point. Like you served them. After you do number one, the second one is everything else. So the rest of it not as essential as number one. So let's talk skills. Leadership skill number one is empathy. You want to connect with the people on your team as individuals. There are no shortcuts to figuring out how to make every single person that you'll ever work with more productive. Developers are all different. People are all different. Coworkers are different. People from different departments have different cultures. If you end up working cross-functionally, from different skill backgrounds. If you end up working cross-functionally, they have different cultures, but they're also people that are not defined by the stereotypes of their culture as just the way that you're not defined by the stereotypes of the developer culture. So when I first start working with somebody, I try to lay out a few things for myself to figure out. I rarely ask these things directly, though not never. Sometimes it's appropriate to put the questions out like this, but this is what I want to find out for myself. What motivates them? What gets them like to work in the morning? What makes them want to work on something? What crushes their spirit? It is very, very important as a leader to know what is going to destroy your people, what is going to take away their will to work, their will to do good work. And really, that's like the first step to burnout. Like if people are doing work that crushes their spirit, even if they're getting paid for it, like anybody can do it for a little while, and work is work. Like it's not always fun, but there's a difference between stuff that someone doesn't love and stuff that is sort of soul crushing. And so as a leader, it is pretty important to have an eye on those things so you don't accidentally crush somebody's spirit, because that's sad when it happens. What is their work style? Some people need to go heads down for 4 hours. Some people really thrive on collaboration. Some people need to be checked in with a lot. I'm definitely one of those people. I really, really benefit from frequently people just being like, hey, how's that thing going? Some people work solo, like they kind of have the whiteboard and it looks like kind of a serial killer chase scene thing. Like they just need all the notes there. Other people really want to work with other people and talk it out. It may surprise you to find out that I really like talking to people to help me sort my ideas. So getting a sense of what people's work style is really important too. And finally, what are their goals? This can overlap with what motivates them, but it's not necessarily the same thing. What are they aiming towards in their career? And what parts of their goals for life can you build their jobs here to get them to? And how can you support them? It is really easy to assume that other people are motivated by the same thing as we are. And it's pretty important to not do that. You want to understand what makes your people tick. We've harped on diversity like a lot in the last 2 talks, and I'm not going to not mention it here. There's a lot of research that shows that diverse teams produce better work. Full stop. And one thing that diversity exists on many, many axes, but one of them is this motivation question. So if everybody who works for you isn't exactly like you, they're not all going to want the same thing out of their work. So for example, here's a concrete example. I had 2 people that I was managing that were both quite senior. They were the 2 most senior developers in the company. And I needed to figure out just sort of how to push them both to the next level. Well, one of them was very, very into solving the problems in the code, like figuring out the architecture, implementing design patterns, making life better for his coworkers. Like what he really wanted to do was design these beautiful, complicated systems in code that also would make the people he worked with better at what they did and happy. So that's sort of a traditional like architect path. The other person, equally senior, but what he was motivated by was helping people, full stop. Like he wanted to help non-developers. He wanted to help the clients. He was a fine programmer. He was a perfectly good programmer, but he was motivated less by the beauty of the code itself and more by helping the end result of that code. Like, what did it get us? So for those two people, I needed to manage their careers in different ways. So the one who loved these technical problems, I had him move into a role where he was sort of owning the architecture. You know, he had a sort of a position where he could see everything that was happening and had some like yes and no over it. The other one, I had him helping me figure out our processes. He sat down and figured out, okay, where are there things that are getting in the way? How can we fight fires more proactively and save the day and help people without always having to be reactive? So those are two people. They had the same title. They both ended up having the same very high level title. They had dramatically different jobs. And especially as people get more senior, they're going to want different things out of their jobs. And that's going to be happening more and more. So see people as individuals. Leadership skill number 2, setting clear expectations. So one of the most important things you can do as a leader is to make it clear what you need from people. And this does not actually come naturally to a lot of people because we spend a lot of time softening our speech in everyday communication. We don't say, go to the store for me. We say, would you mind running to the store today to get this thing that I need? Or if you have time later when you're out anyway, it would really be helpful if you picked up some milk. They're all kind of the same thing, especially if I'm talking to like my husband or somebody who I know is going to say yes. But politeness dictates that we add all these extra words and make it sound kind of optional. That is a huge problem when you're a manager. You need to make it really clear to people what success looks like. So there's several different tools that we can use for this. You can make clear performance expectations. So things about coding at up to a certain level or a certain number of bugs or having to respond to tickets in a timely manner. Things that are like really tied to the work that can help. Code quality expectations. So getting in a little bit more specifically here, you can say things like you have to lint everything, and here's our linter. Here's what it will look like. Or the code needs to follow these certain design patterns, or we're going to have it. You need to work with another more senior person to design the architecture and make sure that it will be reliable and scalable. So setting some specifics around the actual code that's output. Interpersonal expectations. This one is pretty near and dear to me. And I think it's one of the first ones that not all, but certainly a lot of engineering managers and a lot of engineers let go. The conduct that you accept is the conduct that you're saying is okay. So if you have an exceptionally talented developer on your team who's also kind of a jerk, and that person says something in Slack that's curt, or they are always giving unnecessarily judgmental feedback on PRs, you can kind of go one of two ways, right? You can say, yeah, they're a little mean, but people kind of know what they mean, and they're really good programmers, so it's whatever. It's just Laura being Laura, right? Or you can make it clear that the way that we interact with each other is as important as the work that we output. Either by talking to the people directly, one-on-one, or just by publicly being like, I don't want to use the word chastise because nobody wants to be chastised in public. That's not appropriate either, but just sort of helping set the level of decorum that is required and giving people a nudge when they fail, because the rest of your team sees that and they understand what's okay and what's not okay based on what you are letting through. Finally, working agreements can be a fantastic tool. This is something that you might want to go look up. It's not necessarily, we just don't have time to get into it here, but in a short package TLDR version, working agreements are when the team comes together and without you from on high telling people what to do, but rather the team as a whole makes agreements about how you will work together. So what are, how long is it acceptable to wait before you respond to somebody, and what are the working hours that we expect you to be around, and when do you need to notify us about this or that, and how should we handle PRs and things like that. So setting together working agreements and getting the team to build it together and thus buy in is can be a fantastic tool, because people respond to things that they had a hand in building much better than they will respond to things that are imposed on them from above, even if they end up being things that, like, even if they come to the same place, the process of getting there and building it together is going to create a more cohesive team and individuals that are more likely to agree to actually do those things. So one thing I find myself saying to people all the time when they come to me to talk about management woes or productivity woes or process woes is, have you told them that? I solve so many problems this way, I might have just put myself out of business as a consultant, because now you should all just ask yourselves this instead of paying me to ask you. But it's sort of unreal to me, unbelievable how many problems people have in management and in teams where they're like, oh, this person is working this way. It's really frustrating. I thought we were going to go over here, but we actually went to this direction with it. And I don't know why they said such and such to the boss, and their work is really bad. And I don't know, like, they're just doing such bad work. And I don't know why they don't do better and why they don't realize that. And the question, well, have you told them that? The answer is like, no, like way too often. So it's really important to just say the thing to people. Like, if you're telling the story to somebody, like the way I just kind of, had that one with really vague details, but if you're sort of like say the story out loud, and then at the end of it say, okay, well, have I told them that? Have I made it clear what my expectations are? That is a fantastic diagnostic tool, because the answer is too often going to be no. This leads directly into leadership skill number 3, communicating with clarity. Hey, Minnesota, we need to talk. I am not from here originally. I'm from Chicago, which in many ways is the exact opposite of communication here. Very direct, very to the point. And moving here was an adventure in learning how to communicate in this different culture. Minnesotans are exceedingly indirect. The inclination is to imply rather than say outright. And I'm not like putting a judgment on that. It's just a cultural difference. Unfortunately, it's a cultural difference that does not serve people well in the workplace, because those are things that we do to preserve social ties and social niceties. And social ties are less important in the workplace than doing effective work. So it isn't the most comfortable place for most Minnesotans that I work with to get to this point of direct feedback, but it's so important. So here are some steps to communicate with clarity. First, figure out what you need to communicate. So understand what it is that you need them to know at the end of the conversation. So 1, what are the most important things that you need this person to know? At the end of this conversation, like what would you want them to write down as a summary if you were to have them do that? And 2, what do you need from them / what do you need them to do? So the first one is about laying out the facts and making sure that you're both working from the same place, the same shared set of facts about the situation. I need them to know that when they did not get that work in by the deadline, it ended up impacting the rest of the work that we sent to the client because we couldn't finish the feature and we all looked pretty bad. What do you need from them? That's a second part. What exact clear action do you need from the person you're talking to rectify this situation or keep it from happening again? In the future, if you're going to miss a deadline, we need you to communicate it early and proactively, as early as you can. It would obviously be even better if we didn't miss deadlines. Having both parts of that means that there's no ambiguity in the communication. And sometimes often, I think people would do the first one and they assume that what you need from them is implied from the facts that you needed them to know. And it may be, but it also probably isn't, because what's really clear in your own head is not always as clear to the other person. So having a concrete ask, making it very clear, like, we're having this conversation because I need this, that it goes a very long way. A note about difficult conversations. So you're going to have a lot as a manager. That's part of your job. It's not like the most fun part of your job, but it's part of your job. And the longer you put it off, the worse it will be for everybody. To be clear, in big text, the longer you put off difficult conversations, the worse it is for everybody. Things don't tend to fix themselves without some sort of course correction. Because if we go back to what I was saying earlier about interpersonal communication and the things that you let people do are what you are saying is okay. If you have an employee, direct report who's messing up, and you don't say anything because you assume that they know that they shouldn't be doing that thing, and they'll get, it'll fix itself, and you don't really want to talk about it, and it continues to not fix itself, waiting for them to figure out that you don't like it is not effective, because the longer they do it and don't get the feedback that it's wrong, the longer they're getting the message that what they're doing is actually okay. And by the time you deliver that message, if you've put it off too long, it's really whiplashy for the employee. It's very uncomfortable, because they're sitting in the situation where not only are they getting critical, possibly negative feedback, which is difficult as humans to hear and always uncomfortable, especially in the context of work where you're wondering what it means for your prolonged employment. It also has this element of like, why didn't someone tell me? Like, I would have changed that. I would have fixed it. And now it's been 6 months and you've been secretly mad at me for this whole time. It's a bad feeling. So you want to try to address things as soon as you realize they need to be addressed, frankly. Like, take a minute and think about how you're going to do it. And there's different ways that are appropriate. But putting it off doesn't fix the problem. It just makes you feel better that moment in exchange for kicking the can down the road. It's a form of procrastination. It's like putting off an uncomfortable thing. So having the conversations, the hard ones, sooner is really, really important. I think that it's worth talking about how this intersects with like performance reviews or like other annual things. My firm belief is that there should be no surprises in a performance review. If you tell somebody about a major performance problem, and the first time they're hearing about it is this big, scary meeting where they're going to have this thing go on their permanent record and it might affect their promotion or their raise, that is like, you've waited way too long to do that. That's not really an appropriate place to do it. Feedback should be happening continually throughout the relationship so that it doesn't, ideally, it's just gentle course correction. It's not, we got to have a conversation. Those are going to happen. It's not like a failure state if you have to have one of those conversations, but it should be a last resort. Like it should, hopefully most of them should be avoided by just like gentle nudges or direct nudges leading up to that point. Yeah. And, you know, it's even to the degree that like I have been writing performance reviews and I maybe didn't, sometimes you don't see the whole problem until you actually lay it all out in front of you as you're like writing that thing and you're like, oh, yeah, this needs to be addressed. And I have called a meeting before the formal performance review meeting to address, to like deliver that feedback so that it is not a surprise in that otherwise highly emotionally charged meeting. So early and often, tell people the good stuff and the bad stuff as soon as you know it. That's my time. Thank you so much, Minibar. If you want to get a hold of me, there's some ways right there. You can email me. I'm not really good at replying to email, but you could try. I'm a little better about Twitter. That URL down there is if you want to jump on my incredibly low volume mailing list. I will just let you know when I have courses, trainings, blog posts, that kind of thing. It's just a way to let me know that you want to keep in touch. So grab your screenshot and follow me in the places. So I have 2 minutes for questions. So type them in the box. I'm going to start with one that came in during the talk. Question from Andrea. When team members come and go, how do you handle the working agreement over time so the newer team members feel like they also have buy-in? That's a great question. I think it is, let's see, I have not directly had a formal working agreement where this happened, but in general, when it comes to culture and process, I find that it's very important as part of onboarding to make explicit the parts of culture that everybody kind of figured out as they went along. So the new person is not just like floundering, and a working agreement can do that fairly well if you have one. But also to make it clear when there's something we do because of a certain thing, like we do this way because, and make it clear there's other stuff that it's like, oh, we do it that way, but like, if you have a better idea, we're open. Like it just kind of evolved, you know, because all teams have that, especially teams that have not hired new people in a while. You kind of fall into a groove and you don't realize how much you're just sort of going through the motions and like cargo cult culture. So making sure that you make it clear to people during onboarding that like our culture is malleable. This is what it currently is. If you have other ideas, let's do it. And then also having a culture within the team of actually hearing those ideas and actually changing what you do if you say that you will. Yeah. So let's see. I don't have any other questions lined up just yet. So maybe I am done. Cool. All right. It says there's only the one question. So I talked really fast and threw a lot at you. So perhaps you just need to let it sink in. You can find me on the internet, and I'll be happy to chat about this stuff either here or in the chat bar after we're done and during the other presentations. Thanks.